When we named the book Finding Freedom, people were asking, like, why the name? What kind of freedom are the couple looking for? And I think what we see the couple living now in California is that freedom that they needed in order to thrive in their lives rather than, as Meghan once put it, survive. And, this is a life in which they're able to control what they keep private. It's why we haven't seen those first photos of Lily yet. And it also allows them to take some control of the narrative. When they want to put their work out or share news of an initiative or project, they're very much in control of that. And I think these are some of the many things that they were looking for. And of course, on top of that, in just over a year, the couple have built what will be an incredible legacy for themselves, getting involved in film and TV and audio projects, but then of course the foundation as well. They're basically living the dream that they wanted for their lives all along. And finally, it's a reality. Unfortunately, it's come at great cost. There was major sacrifices that needed to be made and fractured relations on this side of the pond. But it was definitely what was needed for them. And I think we can see just how happy they are right now. Writing this update for the book, we checked in with a lot of sources and friends of the couple who had helped us out with information and answering to some of the rumors and mistruths over the past few years. And going back to them with the Sussexes in such a different place, my question, of course, was, were there any regrets about the way in which things played out? Because they were in uncharted territory a lot of the time. They had to kind of make it up as they went along during those moments as they stepped away. And the answer from everyone was no regrets whatsoever. Ultimately, that world that they've built for themselves in the US is working for them. They found an environment that's away from the toxicity of the royal institution that they had to sort of grin and bear for such a long time. But more importantly, as parents, this is what they wanted to provide for their children. For Harry, it was a childhood that mirrored some of the great aspects of his, but kept his children away from some of the things that he struggled with when he was younger as well. And I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that next year when he releases his own memoir. But this is a couple that are now doing things their way. And I know that's such a cliche to say, but it is what they needed, and it's why they're thriving. I think for Harry and Meghan, starting up a new life, a new business, a new legacy for themselves in the middle of a pandemic was quite the challenge. They're a couple that kind of are at their best when they're on the ground, meeting people, actually there helping out within the charities and organizations that they affiliate themselves with. And so they kind of had to find a new way to work. And a lot of that has been through, of course, their production company that they set up to focus on projects for Netflix. So not only the documentaries that they're making, but there's also an entire department dedicated to scripted activities. And so I think that's going to be the most interesting thing to watch for the Sussexes over the next year or so, is to see where they take that. Just like the Obamas, who set up their production company to acquire intelligent rights to incredible and impactful stories from around the world. I think we're going to see the Sussexes doing that as well and trying out new things. This is, especially for Harry, a chance for him to actually do many things that those sort of royal shackles that he wore for such a long time prevented him from doing. So I think that's going to be a lot of their work. But of course, at the core of it is the charity stuff. And I think as we take those first steps out of sort of the COVID lives that we've been living for the past 18 months, we're going to be seeing a lot more of Harry and Meghan. We haven't seen those sort of special engagements that we once sort of loved watching them on. And whilst they will be a lot more pared back than the sort of royal style that we're used to, it will be a chance to see the couple on the ground at work doing what they love best. We've heard what the charity is doing behind the scenes. They've been helping with relief efforts in Afghanistan and Haiti, but there's so much they want to do within the US, within local communities as well. So this sort of paints like a big picture of what that Archwell/Sussex world will look like moving forwards. Someone recently asked me, what do you think the Sussexes have learned after stepping away from the royal institution? And I think one of the things is a lesson that perhaps they weren't even looking for. And that is, it's okay to slow down. I remember aides close to the couple that worked with them at the palace here often used to say, they like to jump from one big project to the next. They run at 100 miles an hour. And like many of us, the pandemic has forced us to slow down a bit. And so they've been able to find that sort of great work-life balance that's clearly working for them, getting a lot achieved with Archwell, the foundation and the production side of things, but at home as a family to spend those really important moments together. And with the pair of them taking an extended parental leave as well, it's allowed them to really enjoy private moments as a family at their Montecito home. You know, both of them took an extended parental leave that mirrored what they've made available for all staff working for Archwell. So they're kind of leading by example. That's sort of close to a 5-month break for both of them, mum and dad. So they're doing things a little differently, but it's, I think, refreshing to see royal sort of stepping away from the norm. You know, royal men very rarely take paternity leave. Sometimes it's just a couple of weeks. So Harry's doing things a bit differently, but what I've heard from sources, they're loving it, they're happy, and this is the life that they wanted to make. The couple certainly aren't great fans of when they're followed by paparazzi. It's something that they've had to get more used to since moving over to the US, because there's a stronger culture for it in LA compared to here in the UK, where we finally have some sort of tighter laws to prevent that from happening. You know, as Meghan wrote about very eloquently and movingly in the New York Times, she suffered a miscarriage last year. And, you know, it sort of leads us to understand why the couple may have been frustrated or angry to be photographed in sort of private moments last year. You know, the photographs splashed all over a British tabloid of the couple at a medical facility, speculating why they may have been there. But of course, as we got to learn more of their story, we realized that just how intrusive some of these moments must be for the couple. And it's why we've seen them put their foot down. You know, many people have questioned, why is this a couple that talk about privacy but then put their lives out there for consumption? And I think that ultimately what they wanted to do is create a life where they're in control over what they keep private. So if they want to share that photo of Lily, they'll do it, but they're not asking people or they're hoping for people not to come over and take paparazzi shots of her from 20 miles away, you know, and I think that's the difference. They want to be able to choose what they share with the world. And I think we see a lot from them for that. You know, Meghan's spoken very openly about her mental health struggles in the Oprah interview. Harry's about to open up his entire life on the pages of a book. So this is a couple that doesn't want to shy away from the public. They just want to be able to choose to how they share those moments with the world, albeit sensitively. Many people asked, you know, why did the Sussexes do that Oprah interview at the time that they did? Because technically, as soon as they stepped away from their royal roles, they would have been able to speak much more freely. But I think what many people forget was there was this huge court case going on in the UK, Meghan versus the Daily Mail, one of the most aggressive tabloids in the country. She was suing them for publishing a private letter she had written to her father. And one of the biggest conversations surrounding that in the court was invasion of privacy. So if there's one thing you shouldn't do in the middle of a case like that, is share your private moments with the world through an interview with Oprah. So we can understand why just the day after Meghan had that landmark win at the London High Court against the paper, that they were able to turn around to Oprah and say, we're ready to talk, we can do it. And my, didn't they just? And we spoke to sources about that process and how it felt for the couple afterwards. You know, there were some huge bombshells. And the word that was used by a source close to Meghan was cathartic. It felt like getting something off their chest that they needed to do for a long time. You know, it's not easy when you have people talking and speculating about your life for 3 years, 4 years almost, and you're unable to answer back because of royal protocol. And this was their chance to finally do that. And I think it helped us understand who they are on a much deeper level. We talk about in the book that moment where the couple sat down with Oprah and spoke about the racism that Meghan experienced within the royal institution. Most shockingly, that a royal family member had aired concerns about the color or the darkness of Archie's skin. And, you know, the couple were very quick to point out that it wasn't the Queen or Prince Philip, but there were questions over why they didn't announce that to the world. And I was told by a source that they had actually considered maybe being fully transparent about everything that had happened. But I think there's also a feeling there that that's someone else's story to tell. You know, they were there to share their side of it. And if there's someone else involved, maybe they will, maybe they won't in the future. But as the couple said, it would be very damaging to the monarchy if we knew. And that then raises a lot of questions over here in the UK. You know, we all ask, is it a future head of state, a future king that made these comments? And if it is, we feel like we have a right to know, because of course that's something that we don't technically want at the head of the royal institution. So it kind of leaves the royal family in a sticky area. They haven't addressed it, they've kept it private, and it's been strange to see that alongside them speaking so openly about the bullying allegations that Meghan's faced. But these are some of the challenges I think the royal family will have to deal with over the years ahead. People will want answers to these questions in time. I hear that a lot from young people in this country, and I don't think hiding from it is going to make it disappear for good. The couple, I heard from sources, were aware of that sort of overwhelmingly large outpouring of support from the American public. You know, I think people didn't quite understand why the couple stepped away in the manner in which they did. And I think there was perhaps a belief that they were being a bit selfish, that they just wanted their cake as well as eating it too. And you know, I think when we heard what the couple actually went through, and that's something that Finding Freedom also goes into great detail about, you have a better understanding of why they had to get away at the time that they did. Unfortunately for them, over here in the UK, the reaction was very different. In fact, if anything, it's probably damaged their popularity even further here in the UK. People are very protective of the royal family, particularly the Queen. And, you know, they have every reason to be. The Queen has lived an incredible life and had some amazing achievements under her crown, but it doesn't stop those very real points that the couple made from being things that need to be discussed. And we sort of have a split nation now. There are people that are on Harry and Meghan's side and want to support them, but also challenge the royal family. And there are those that don't want to hear anything that Harry and Meghan have to say. And you can see that if you open the tabloids here on a daily basis. That statement that came from the Queen after the Oprah interview, I think it was about 36 hours before we got it from the world. And the reason for that was because it didn't air in the UK until the following day from the US. So members of the royal family here who were not provided with an advance copy had to go away and watch it on television in Britain, just like everyone else. And you know, the reactions that we heard at the time was a feeling of frustration about the couple speaking so candidly about how they felt, airing their grievances so openly about individuals who couldn't technically answer back. You know, the palace sort of sticks to this never complain mantra. And that means it's why we don't hear much from royals in terms of the difficulties of royal life. And when we spoke to sources close to William and Kate, it was William that was particularly angry about the couple doing it, because his biggest gripe all along was how publicly the couple had made what he felt were private family matters. And so sitting down in front of Oprah sort of further angered him on that matter. And it's one of the reasons why there's still that separation between the two brothers. I think there hasn't been that moment for them to sit down and properly talk it out. The only time they've come together are personal family moments, the funeral of Prince Philip, the Diana statue unveiling. And as we saw in those moments, they very professionally put their issues to one side to focus on the task at hand. But that moment will have to come. And I would imagine that as the world starts traveling again and we see perhaps a little bit more of the Sussexes here in the UK, those may be those first steps forward in the right direction. We talk in great detail about Harry's trip over to London for Prince Philip's funeral. It was, of course, really important for him to be here to not only remember the life of his grandfather, someone he was so close to, but also to give that support to the Queen. There were the special moments that they shared with each other after the funeral. And in fact, sources told us that Harry had really made sure that he spent as much time as possible with the Queen before flying back. But of course, Meghan wasn't here. She was carrying child at the time, and it wouldn't have been safe at all to fly in the middle of a pandemic. But when that news was confirmed by the Sussexes team, there were a number of palace aides, and we had it repeated to us as well, and it's in the book, who felt that, and as did some of the family members themselves, that it was almost a blessing that Meghan wasn't there, that her just being there would have turned it into a much bigger story than it needed to be. It would have overshadowed the situation. And listen, I can kind of understand where they may be coming from, because the whole time over here, while Harry was in town, that's all the papers were focused on. And so if Meghan was here too, it would have really turned it into a hysterical display of the tabloids. And I think at a moment like that, you really want the focus to be on the situation that they were there for. And we saw Meghan pay her respects in her own way. She, of course, sent over that wreath and put a lot of thought into it. And I know that, of course, Meghan was very close to Philip too. So it was hard news for both of them, not just for Harry. Many people expected that trip to London for Prince Philip's funeral to be the time that we saw William and Harry permanently put their issues to one side and actually move forward in the right direction. Now, we did see those very special moments outside the church when they all walked back to Windsor Castle. It was seeing the brothers just engaging in conversation like they used to. And I think it shows that the brothers are capable of doing that. It also shows, and sources have said the same to us, that that anger that had been there between them is starting to slowly disappear. But of course, there are big issues that still need to be discussed. And I know that when Harry came over here for the unveiling of the statue for his late mother at Kensington Palace, although William and Harry spent those moments in front of the press and alongside Diana's family to share that moment with the world, as soon as it was over, I think about 15 minutes later, Harry was on his way back to his own place. And so that does show us that distance that still exists between the brothers. As far as I'm aware, there's been very little communication between the two sides since then. One can only hope that maybe at some point a family member gets involved. You know, I think we're all used to family quarrels and disputes, and there's always a sort of senior family member that will get in the middle of it and pull everyone together and get everyone talking. And unfortunately, that just hasn't happened in the royal family. The quote I was given by a source was that people don't like to get involved in each other's business, which I'm not really sure if that works for families.